She said she was untouchable, that her mom ran the HOA, and no one could touch her, not the neighbors, not the board, not even the police. So when my ATV vanished from my driveway, and I saw her riding it down the street like it was hers, I knew exactly who to confront. But what I didn't expect was the smug grin, the threats, and the twisted game she played to keep it. That was the moment I stopped being a neighbor and started being a problem. What happens when entitlement meets consequences? Keep watching. I moved into the neighborhood for peace. After years of city noise and cramped apartments, this quiet cul-de-sac felt like a breath of fresh air. My house wasn't huge, but it had space, enough for weekend projects, a small garden, and my pride and joy. A matte black ATV I kept parked beside the garage. I wasn't reckless with it. I used it for trail rides, hauling mulch, and the occasional joyride through the nearby woods. It was mine, paid for, maintained, locked up every night. The community was typical suburban, trimmed hedges, pastel siding, and an HOA that prided itself on preserving neighborhood harmony. Most of the rules were harmless. No loud music after 9. No inflatable pools in front yards. No holiday decorations past January. I followed them. I wasn't trying to stir trouble. But trouble found me anyway. 3 houses down lived Karen. Mid-50s, silver bob, always in press slacks and a clipboard in hand. She ran the HOA like a private kingdom. Her lawn was flawless. Her mailbox had gold trim. And her daughter, let's call her Madison, was the neighborhood's untouchable. Late teens, smug, always on her phone, always talking down to people like she owned the pavement she walked on. I didn't interact with them much. I waved. They didn't wave back. That was fine. Until Madison started eyeing my ATV. It began with comments. "Nice ride," she said once, lingering a little too long near the driveway. Then came the questions. "Does it go fast? Do you lock it up?" I brushed it off. Teen curiosity, I thought. But something fell off. Karen had already fined me once for leaving the ATV visible from the street. "Violates aesthetic standards," she wrote. I moved it behind a privacy screen. She fined me again for unapproved screening material. It was a tarp. I started to feel watched. Neighbors whispered about Karen's control, about Madison's attitude, about how complaints against them mysteriously disappeared. I didn't want to get involved. I just wanted to live. But when the ATV vanished, everything changed. And the person riding it down the street wasn't a stranger. The morning after Madison rode off with my ATV like it was hers, I stood in my driveway stunned. I hadn't given her permission. I hadn't even spoken to her beyond a few awkward nods. And yet there she was, cruising down the street, laughing with her friends like she'd just borrowed a toy. I called the police. They arrived quickly, took my statement, and asked if I had proof of ownership. I handed over the title, the purchase receipt, and photos of the ATV parked in my driveway. They nodded, said they'd look into it, and left. No immediate action. No urgency. Just a shrug and a promise. I waited. Hours passed. Madison didn't return the ATV. Instead, she parked it in her garage, like it belonged to her. I knocked on Karen's door. She opened it with a tight smile and said, "Is there a problem?" I asked for my ATV back. She laughed. "You shouldn't leave things out if you don't want them borrowed." Borrowed. I told her it wasn't a toy. It was registered, insured, and locked. She shrugged. Madison said it was unlocked. "Maybe you should be more responsible." I walked away, fists clenched, heart pounding. The next day, I received a letter from the HOA. Violation notice, unauthorized vehicle storage. Apparently, my ATV, now missing, was still considered a nuisance. The fine? $150. I called the HOA office. No answer. I emailed. No reply. I posted about it online. The neighborhood lit up. People shared stories, fines for basketball hoops, for garden flags, for having too many guests. Karen's name came up again and again. Madison's too. One neighbor said Madison had taken their bike for a ride and returned it damaged. Another claimed she'd keyed their car after being told to slow down. I wasn't alone. I filed a formal complaint with the HOA, attached photos, receipts, and a police report. Days passed. No response. Then came another letter, this time citing me for harassment of board members. The fine doubled. $300. I was being punished for speaking up. I installed cameras. I documented everything. Madison walking past my house, smirking. Karen snapping photos of my yard. Anonymous notes left in my mailbox. You're not welcome here. Stop causing trouble. We know where you live. I felt trapped. But I wasn't backing down. I filed a civil claim. My lawyer sent a demand letter. We requested the immediate return of the ATV, compensation for damages, and an investigation into HOA misconduct. Karen responded with a counterclaim, accusing me of defamation, trespassing, and creating a hostile environment. It was absurd, but it worked. The HOA board scheduled a hearing. I showed up with my lawyer, my documents, and a folder full of neighbor testimonials. Karen arrived with Madison, both dressed like they were attending a brunch, not a legal proceeding. Madison rolled her eyes through the entire meeting. Karen interrupted constantly, claiming I was unstable, obsessed, and trying to ruin her daughter's future. Then came the footage. My lawyer played the security video. Madison walking into my driveway, fiddling with the lock, and driving off. No hesitation. No permission. Just theft. The room went silent. Karen tried to spin it. Said Madison thought it was a gift. That she'd heard rumors I was giving it away. That she was just confused. But the footage didn't lie. The board voted to suspend Karen's presidency pending investigation. Madison was ordered to return the ATV immediately. But the damage was done. The ATV came back scratched, dented, and reeking of spilled gasoline. The tires were worn. The seat was torn. It looked like it had been through a war. I filed for damages. Karen retaliated. She sent out a newsletter accusing me of destabilizing the community. She claimed I was harassing a minor. She even tried to ban me from future HOA meetings. But the neighbors weren't buying it anymore. One by one, they started speaking out. A petition circulated. Residents demanded Karen's removal. They called for transparency, accountability, and reform. The HOA office was flooded with emails. The board couldn't ignore it. Karen was officially removed. But Madison wasn't done. One night, I heard a loud bang outside. I rushed out and found my mailbox smashed. The camera caught her, hood up, bat in hand, running down the street. I called the police again. This time, they didn't shrug. They arrested her, charged with vandalism, theft, and harassment. Karen tried to intervene, claimed it was a misunderstanding, that Madison was just blowing off steam. But the officers weren't interested. They had footage, reports, and a growing stack of complaints. Madison was taken away in cuffs. And as the cruiser pulled out of the cul-de-sac, neighbors stood on their porches, watching silently. Some filmed, some clapped, but no one looked away. Because this wasn't just about an ATV anymore. It was about power, abuse, entitlement, and the moment Karen's empire began to crumble. The audit results came back 2 weeks later. It wasn't just bad, it was damning. Karen had misused thousands in HOA funds over the past 3 years. Landscaping invoices for her private yard, catered board meetings held in her home, even a payment to a local attorney listed as community legal consultation that turned out to be Madison's defense lawyer from a previous incident. The paper trail was undeniable. The board released a statement. Karen was permanently banned from holding any HOA position. Madison was barred from attending community events for 1 year. And the HOA bylaws were being rewritten publicly, transparently, with resident input. But the real shift wasn't in the paperwork. It was in the people. Neighbors who had once stayed silent now spoke freely. The fear was gone. The whispers turned into conversations. The resentment turned into action. A new advisory panel was formed, diverse, elected, and accountable. Fines were paused. Old complaints were reviewed. Refunds were issued. The HOA, once a tool of control, began to feel like a community again. I rebuilt my mailbox, repainted the garage, replaced the ATV seat and tires. It wasn't about restoring what was lost. It was about reclaiming peace. Every nail I hammered felt like a statement. I'm still here. I'm not backing down. Madison's case went to court. She pled guilty to misdemeanor theft and vandalism. The judge ordered community service and a formal apology. She delivered it in writing. 2 paragraphs, typed, emotionless. But it didn't matter. The apology wasn't for me. It was for the record. Karen disappeared from public view. Her lawn grew patchy. Her blinds stayed shut. She stopped attending meetings, stopped walking the neighborhood, stopped pretending she was in charge. Some said she was planning to move. Others said she was waiting for things to blow over. But they didn't. Because the story had already spread. Local news, pick up. Then a regional outlet. Then a podcast about HOA horror stories. My inbox filled with messages. People from other neighborhoods, other states, sharing their own battles with petty power and unchecked authority. Some asked for advice. Some just wanted to say, thank you. I didn't expect to become a symbol. I just wanted my ATV back. But sometimes, standing up for one thing reveals everything else that's broken. The HOA board invited me to join the advisory panel. I accepted, not because I wanted power, but because I wanted to make sure no one else went through what I did. We rewrote the rules, simplified the language, removed vague clauses like aesthetic harmony and community standards. We added protections for residents, appeal rights, transparency requirements, and a cap on fines. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One afternoon, I was working in the yard when a boy rode past on a bike and stopped. He pointed at the ATV and said, "Is that the one she stole?" I nodded. He grinned. "Cool. Glad you got it back." That moment stuck with me because it reminded me that people notice. They remember. They learn. And maybe Madison did too. I saw her once, months later, planting flowers in a public park as part of her service. She didn't look up. I didn't speak. But I watched her kneel in the dirt, hands covered in soil, surrounded by marigolds and mulch. It was ironic. The girl who once tore through the neighborhood on stolen wheels was now helping beautify it. Poetic justice, maybe. But the real justice was in the change. The neighborhood was different now. More open. More connected. People waved. Talked. Helped. The fear of fines and retaliation had faded. In its place was something stronger. Trust. And me? I kept the ATV. Not just as a vehicle, but as a reminder that silence is easy. But standing up, especially when you're being pushed down, is what makes the difference. So if you're watching this, wondering if your fight is worth it, if your stolen bike, your garden gnome, your mailbox, your right to live peacefully is worth defending, let me tell you, it is. Because when entitlement meets accountability, and petty power finally faces truth, the outcome isn't just justice. It's transformation. Karen thought she was untouchable, but the community proved otherwise. And Madison? She learned that borrowed arrogance burns fast. But consequences? They stick. So next time someone tells you it's just a rule, ask who's writing it. And if they say you can't fight the HOA, show them this story. Because the rules don't define the community. The people do. And when the people rise, even the loudest voices go quiet.